Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you here with us today on our series, Real Working Caregiver Stories. We are thrilled to have our guest who I met actually this past November
Wow.
at the National Summit, Working Caregiver Summit in DC, and we worked together doing some advocacy on Capitol Hill. So I am thrilled to introduce Randi Ervin. Randi shared her
Woohoo.
caregiver story with our team when we were doing our advocacy, and I found it unforgettable and actually quite unique because Randi happens to be the first guest that we've had on our show who has had both sides of the care experience. She was care recipient when she became ill. Her mom cared for her, and then her mom became ill, and Randi ended up being a caregiver for her mom. So we are excited to hear both sides of that story. So Randi, could you just share uh, that story with us?
Okay. Thanks so much for the introduction, Selma. And I'm happy to be
Welcome.
reconnected. And I'm happy to be with Zach too. So thank you for having me
Welcome,
on the
Randy.
show
Pleasure.
and just like allowing more people to hear stories on both sides. So as a patient and caregiver.
Yes.
Um, oh gosh. Okay, so like in 2016, I was diagnosed with pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer. I went in for a Whipple procedure in this very home that you see now. After the Whipple procedure, my mom stayed with me. This is a one-bedroom apartment. It's like,
Mm.
just she's a boomer woman, grew up in the rural South, rural North Carolina, tomboy, was a vet, mostly a stay-at-home mom, but definitely worked when we needed her to like bring in more resources into the home. So she literally slept on my couch and gave me the feeding tube, administered there. I don't know if y'all don't know if the Whipple is crazy. I lost a pancreas, like it's a whole mess, but there's a lot of shots. There's feeding tubes.
Wow.
It is all the GI issues that you can imagine. So she was a trooper and she took care of me. And I remember I'm in walking distance from Kaiser and my mom is 33 years older than me, and we'd walk to my appointments, and she'd lap me because she was in better shape. I was sick. In general,
Wow.
she was in better shape. And we were walking to her appointments. So we'd go to like the grocery store together. We'd like go around the neighborhood. We'd go to the comic book store together, and she was with me.
Aw.
Yeah. So I was the caregiver, and I was the patient, and honestly, like. I think she was 1,000 times more stressed out than me because I knew I was in great hands. So I didn't worry about it. She did laundry, she took out the trash. It was amazing. And
Wow.
then in late 2021, she was sick around the holidays, couldn't hold down food, was throwing up, didn't admit it to anybody until she had an episode. But they live in rural California. I'm in Oakland, California. My dad had to take her to the emergency room because she was throwing up through the night. Um, and that started, oh God, like a harrowing kind of journey. In which, like at the local hospital, they're outside of Lodi, California. She eventually went to the VA where she felt more comfortable. They like Bay Sacramento, rather. And they ran some tests on her, couldn't figure out what was wrong. She's actually transferred to VA San Francisco. This is way more detailed, but San Francisco is closer to Oakland than it is to where they live in California. Um, at the VA San Francisco, her all-woman care team determined that she did have pancreatic adenocarcinoma, so the more aggressive form of pancreatic cancer. She did say her daughter had pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer, and from there they were able to further figure out what happened. Then she had a Whipple procedure, and to pay it forward, and because my sister lives in Oakland, not so far from me, I live in Oakland, it's close to San Francisco. She stayed back here with me during her recovery because, yeah, feeding tubes, shots, you have
Wow.
finger pricks, the whole thing. So I tried to take care of her here. Um, I don't think she liked it. She had like physical therapy came out. We had the home care nurse come out. She's used to more like, I mean, she's, used to like more space. So like and like, she's doing her PT around my apartment building and she's like, I don't like they're very nice and accommodating, but I think she wanted to be back home with her garden and the stray cat she was feeding. Like that was kind of her dream. But um I was I got to see firsthand for caregiving, but I do want to say caregiving is not linear and it took a whole village. My aunts were there all the time. My Aunt Mumpy lives in front of my mom back in a campo that's outside of Lodi. She was there. We would have phone calls regularly. Aunt Belle back in North Carolina would call us. Like we literally have regular phone calls. We had an ongoing Google document. My dad was, I mean, oh gosh, they'd been together since like the 70s. So, he was,
Aw.
and he saw her sick, right? He saw her lose weight. He saw
Right.
her, saw the whole thing. So we were there. And then my sister, can cook. So she prepared food. She came, she was testing things. She had smoothies, congee, anything that would work. She came over every single day to work. So I think that's something in terms of caregiving. It is a village, it's not linear. Positions
Wow.
change, right? Like mom was staying with me. Of course, she was mostly going to stay with my dad back in the campo. And so the journey was always helpful, right? Like my aunts were coming in, we were checking Google, we were asking questions, we were
Yeah.
emotional support just to like ground us, but then also tactily because it's too much information for one person to have. And then just like logistically speaking, right? Like should I say, can I, I'm gonna say it. So the VA has a portal, my VA pet. Yeah, like a lot of us are responding in that portal as my mom via email.
Yeah.
Where we're a mom now. And then, you also have to think about like and I shouldn't say that, but like and then you have to like, who's doing the phone calls,
Yeah.
who's getting the information. Just we have
Right.
different counties to deal with. Like it's a lot of coordination, right? So you're
Right.
going from like one county to another county, being like, no, she doesn't live here, but she's staying here. And then she was considered kind of in a spot that was good. My parents said that the cancer was gone, so she was okay, but it's aggressive, so we knew it was going to come back. And I remember having a very, because I'm familiar with pancreatic cancer, being like, if it comes back, we're screwed. And gosh, okay. And then I just remember everyone in my family talking about this. My like Alice came out to visit my mom. I stayed back because I was sick. Um, just all of the support through the caregiving
Wow.
support. And then so then the cancer did come back at the end of 2022. My parents like they kind of lied to us about it. They were kind of like, "Oh, we can't get the appointments and like the scans work. That's not how hospitals work." She got second opinions at like various UC Davis agencies. She was actually moved into like hospice care eventually.
Wow.
Um, and then she was moved into a just like a respite facility near her end of life. And she passed away and in March 2023. And yeah, so it was a caregiving
Wow.
journey. And then you see the toll it takes on the family later. I don't know if my dad's
Yes.
gonna appreciate sharing this. He's like, we are a healthy family. We are not small people. But my dad lost a lot of weight. He's getting like now he has a lady friend, he's getting his habits back, he's moving in, but it's 2026 now. So it, definitely you saw this. And so he's holding that as a caregiver and trying to be strong. My sister and I have a great relationships, but we have our moments and we saw like that's our mom talking. We,
Wow.
we have like, we saw our family back in North Carolina and back east. So it's still a thing. I will say something my mom did that was amazing was she was like, you've got two people with pancreatic cancer in the family. Genetic reporting, let people know, like this
Yeah.
is real now. And so, of course, I've got cousins and aunts and, other
Yeah.
extended family members being like, okay, they know the journey.
Well,
They know
well,
this
we're
is
so sorry for your loss for
sorry.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up question. Because your mom had the experience first of caring for you, and then she contracts a very similar condition, do you think because she had cared for you, that it um, helped helped her to help you care for her? Like, was she able to say, okay, Randy, this is how you do this, and this is how you administer this medication, and you should give me this at this time, or you need to rotate my body this way? Or was she able to contribute to her own care because she had cared for you? That actually is my question.
Yeah, that's so yeah, the first time I was ever asked me that. I think so the way my mom is, she she was very good at telling me what she was doing at the time and very honest. But then also stereotypical Black woman, she's never going to tell you how much pain she is or in how much anything
Yeah,
is happening. But I do think because she was a caregiver and we actually knew the steps around the football, so that our conversations were like, remember when you had to do this for me, or like when we were doing
yeah,
the feeding tube, I'm like, oh, this is a little bit different than this, and then we could talk about it. And I
yeah,
think like I was in probably better position than most people because I wasn't going in super cold. Like I had
yeah,
familiarity with what like the actual logistics of the process and what to expect.
yeah,
And we could talk through that and we were able to do like this is different. Why isn't this happening? My mom was very good at prompting because she's a this great memory. And the systems that we were in, the medical systems we were in, were very different. My experience was actually quite positive, and I had a lot of support. It was pre-COVID. There was a lot of checks in place. My mom was very good at being like, didn't you have a check-in at this point, or didn't you talk to this person at this point? And then that kind of helped us prompt it. So it was more conversational. Um, and like I mean, she just never complained. That was so I have a lot of guilt around some things too, right? Because you get the survivor guilt, like, I'm still here, and why couldn't I have navigated this better? And why didn't I see this come? Like, you still do this, like, it's rumination, but like you still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I mean, so she was good at directing, but then she also, a part of me thinks it's not fun recovering from multiple pancreatic cancers. Like, none of this is fun. Wouldn't recommend 10 out of 10. And I think I like, she knew it was hard on me because I'm like the childish daughter who can like scream and shout and yell and cry and be extremely emotional. So she knew it was really hard. And I think she didn't want me to see how hard that was for her, because it's like, I think so she never
Wow.
did that. Like, she didn't
Wow.
complain ever, which is not
Y-
great. People complain, like, be very like honest, but yeah, she was a little too easy of a patient, like she just would kind of like anything we put in front of her, she'd try to eat it, or like anything we asked, she'd try to
Yeah.
answer it. She literally was okay just sitting in my bedroom reading and playing her like casino games while I like I was working at the time, so I was like working from home at the time. So it'd be like me screaming and yelling and just being like very emotional, and she was just like, "No, I'm fine. Like, I don't need anything."
Yeah,
You
that's
you
awesome.
guys have the most unique story I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's incredible what you just shared with us. It really
Yeah.
is. What's your mother's name?
Willie. So
Really? Oh, I
Willie
love it.
Willie Gertrude Bunting, and then became Willie Bunting Ervin, and that is also my
Love it.
grandmother's name, Willie Gertrude.
Willie sounds like a lot of fun. So you said comic book store. You got my attention. Who's doing the comics? You or Willie? Who's going to shop for comics?
Oh, so it's me, but that's interesting. So, my mom's a reader. Like, she grew up, she was in library club. I found out like in her high school, and I did not read growing up. So she would always try to find things that I could read. So we always had like magazine subscriptions. So I was like 17, Teen YM, Sassy. Sassy was my favorite because it was something I could read. When I was a little kid, she would get Archie comics and stuff,
Yeah,
but I didn't.
love Archie.
Me too.
Yeah, like, 'cause she's like, this is the thing you'll read. And she read like, but then later in life, I got interested in Batman, kind of independent of her. But like, so I was reading Batman comics and like all that stuff. So we go to the comic book store. And actually, and as interest, because like moms are good, she was like, oh, I'm interested in comics too. So I would like send her some comics to me. She didn't like all of them. And then when she was going through her sickness a little before, like she was reading Luke Cage, we got her all the Black Panther. We got her like
Oh yeah.
other, so more of the Marvel side. I'm
Love
more
it.
of a DC person, but and
Love
actually
it.
I have those comics back. So like, because my dad's like, I don't have room
Hold
for.
on to him. Hold on to him because I have
Yeah.
conversations with my 5-year-old grandson about comics and it's in Marvel and all that. So, but you really piqued my interest on that as well as how cool Willie is. May she rest in peace.
Yeah.
How are
Can I get
you?
a photo of it real quick? Sorry, I should have done
Please.
that earlier.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Heck yeah. Love to see a picture of her.
You like Archie?
I love Archie.
Me too.
Archie comics is absolutely amazing.
I grew up on that Jughead and was it Archie and
Buddy Veronica.
Veronica?
Oh,
Betty,
Veronica.
sorry.
Veronica, Jughead. Yeah.
Okay, so I should have planned ahead better. But yeah, this is my mom and my dad back in the
Oh,
day. And
She's
this is my
gorgeous.
favorite photo of her because it's a little bit scandalous. Love it though. We have family.
Beautiful. Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
very nice.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Um, oh my
Thank
goodness. Well,
you for
thank you
sharing
for
that.
yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing those. So real quick, share with again our viewers exactly what Whipple is, because I don't think a lot of people know how unique of a surgery that is.
Oh yeah, like, am I gonna do a good job? I just remember my surgeon, like Dr. Spencer drew it. So essentially, it's kind of a rewiring of your GI system. I'm not gonna immediately understand this, but like, I remember saying like, I know what the stomach is and I know what the intestines are, and then like he basically like erased half of that and
Yeah.
then reattached
Mm.
the intestine to another part of your
Yeah. It's
stomach.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere near as simple as it sounds. It's very complex. I am familiar with it. Here's an important question. because today in our country we are dealing with a crisis, caregiver crisis, right? So
Yeah.
there's so many people turning 65, 10,000, actually even more now, right, Selma? Like
Yes.
11,000 every day are turning 65. Um, but what one of the biggest complaints and concerns in this country is that people are being discharged from hospitals and family members are picking up some of these complex duties like
Yes.
post-Whipple procedures. How did your mother pick up on that? I know you mentioned that you had some help, but how did your mother manage that? And then how did you manage that in terms of that complex post post-op care that's needed for that? That's complicated.
Yeah, so that's where takes a village, and I definitely think that caregivers need to be added to the EHR. Like I think we need to be very intentional about the discharge and not about the logistics, about the actual emotion burden. I will say my experience at Kaiser, and I don't think I appreciated how much went into this. Like they had in-person trainings on the feeding tube. I was actually, but I was readmitted to the hospital because my surgery, my pancreas was removed. Like a lot of things happened with me, um, and so I was kind of a needy patient. So like we both had in-home care. So we actually had nurses come to our homes afterwards,
Mhm.
which was huge. On
Mm-hmm.
my mom's side, my sister and I were both trained on how to use the feeding tube, and luckily there was familiarity because my sister was somewhat familiar with it, and then I was familiar with it because I was a patient. I will say the thing that was delightful, we talk about this like meet patients where they're at and these like living room conversations. Like the lady who trained us, A was a different county, right? So they found somebody in Alameda County versus San Joaquin County. She actually came to my sister's like condo building and met in the lobby, and we walked through it. We took notes. She was very, very accommodating.
Wow, that's
Kaiser
great.
had check-ins for you. We had like a lot of just like hands-on. I do think the things that were a little different were you have like so this is a story to tell. So my mother's discharge, I don't think was handled well. There's some guilt here, right? So we knew she was getting discharged on a certain day. And they called us and told us to start coming. We're like, okay, we're about an hour away, given traffic to get to the other side of San Francisco, like Lansing side of San Francisco. And they said, okay, don't go in until we call you back. And we never had the call back. So my sister and I, Jamie and I, are waiting until we get this call because we know this is complicated. Like we actually know that this is not a fun discharge. This is like when we have to prep your home, right? So that's another
Hmm.
thing where like I don't
Yes.
we knew that so I was working on my old notes. So like, we were doing a lot of prompting, like, yeah, we need like a raised toilet, we need like assistance in the shower, we need to have like different kind of padding in the beds, like, like because that's gonna happen. You need space, like you literally do need a space by your bed. I just remember all this stuff. Just so you can do like, there's shots, there's like finger pricks, like you've got to have space for the actual like, like I like the holder for the IV for like the pump. And I remember at my time too, there was a lady who was passed. I used to work with her name was Michelle at St. Mary's, but she told me things like get a long cord to like charge your phone, like
Wow.
make sure you have all like this like seat cushions. So it's like using all these informal networks, but they're hugely
Sure.
important because they reduce it. But I
Yeah.
remember at the discharge of my mom, we ended up being quite late because we were waiting for a phone call. And so Jamie and I were prepping. We had all the food ready. We got my mom's coffee just in case she could drink the coffee. Like we were ready to go. We had like freezer pops and waiting for this phone call. We never got the phone call. We were very nervous. So we just started heading over. I remember calling them and they're like, oh yeah, we already discharged your mom. We're like, wait, what? We weren't there. Like, and we're like, you told us not to come in.
Wow.
And so we
Wow.
literally get there and she's just kind of outside. I don't know. My mom's just waiting outside
Wow.
of like the hospital in like San Francisco,
Wow.
like that.
Jeez.
And we walk
Yeah.
out, and I think one of the nurses is looking at us like, "You guys are fucking like, I'm sorry, you guys are jerks because like why
Yeah.
didn't you get here sooner?" And my mom like already had her stuff packed up because we had the bag, so we had like just
Yeah.
said she had her bag ready to go. That was separate. My sister did
Yeah.
something really smart when I was in there. She's like, "Get a bag that you're okay with leaving because if like things go sideways, it's okay to." So she was ready to go, and we got there, and we just got this like they emailed us some stuff, but it was like they emailed it to my dad. And it was kind of just like PDFs of like text. And they just
Mm.
handed us this thing. And it was a really sweet lady who was there, but she was not obviously like a nurse practitioner. And I
Yeah.
was kind of like, and it was just like all these details and just like list of medications. And it just wasn't like mom had her medications. It just wasn't contextually logical. Like you could go back to it, but it was not super organized. It wasn't friendly. It was obviously very probably Lawyers loved it. Probably legally proceeding great. But like, there was no like and we did have walkthroughs eventually with it, but in hindsight, like I mean you're talking to my sister who's like takes notes on top of notes and, you know, uses all of the resources and is like a sponge. You're talking to my dad who's smart, but like super smart, but emotional and looks at the logistics. You're talking
Yeah.
to my Aunt Belle, who actually has been a caregiver for other reasons for two, like these are all of us on the same call. You're talking to
Yeah.
me who understood
Yeah.
whiplash.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and we're all on the same call. We're getting our questions answered, but we're prompting them on a lot of this stuff, right? Because we
Yeah.
know what we're supposed to be doing. And so the discharge process, I don't think. And then I remember at one point we had to like, I remember us doing this whole project of being like, because we knew there was bad interactions because my mom had some medications beforehand that she was using. Like she had like high blood pressure, she had like a kind of long-term thing she was doing. And then
Hmm.
she has these new medications, and we're like, nobody ever like walk through interactions or spacing or timing. And we knew this was supposed to be a thing. So it's like us, you know, this isn't ChatGPT wasn't there. So we were like, but this is us Googling and like us going through like forms. Like, we don't think this is right. But it was so much prompting to just be like, yeah, but she's got to wait this long after her thyroid medication
Wow.
because she has Hashimoto's. Like, why didn't y'all tell us this? And it was kind of written, like page, 28, and like, like that one line, but like,
Wow.
but yeah.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
one
Hey,
of I just remember this project and being like, it was during one of our calls. My sister's like, we have bad interactions. And like, yeah, like, and then my Aunt Belle was like, yeah, we need to map this out. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. But like, takes a village, right? Like, it's a whole thing.
wow, wow. We know shout outs to our previous guests that we've interviewed, right? Selma, right, who's working on AI tools just for
Yes.
things like this. That's was it Nicole? Nicole A.
Yeah,
Beckett?
Nicole,
And
yes, the
yeah,
Nicole,
Monday of
yeah.
yeah,
caregiving. Like
yeah.
I saw,
And
sorry, I don't want to give
And
no,
Brittany.
no. And
And
Brittany Hogan.
Brittany.
Brittany
Yeah.
Hogan,
Brittany
both
Hogan. Yeah.
of them that we interviewed are taking their
Yeah.
caregiver experiences and helping the caregivers. One other just quick question, because we really want to take advantage of the fact that you were a care recipient. So,
Yeah.
and just briefly, if you could just give us 2 to 3 tips as a care recipient to caregivers watching this, and this is no criticism of Willie or anybody else that was caring for you. What just think about your experience. What are 2 to 3 tips that caregivers should always keep in mind when caring for someone?
Oh, that's a big question. So I'm gonna say care needs coordination is huge. You guys mentioned Nicole, so we met Nicole during Hill Day. She has Hero Generation, like just like the coordination and all the pieces.
Yes.
That is a lot, and don't undervalue that and own that you're doing a lot. So that's huge coordination. Um, Caregivers, you're constant. So I think that's something like, so as a care recipient, like I did not realize like you're there all the time. You don't have a break. It's constant. And th- the selfish girl in me did not realize, like I remember when I hit my 5 year mark of my cancer and I like talked to my surgeon. I was like, oh my God, like I'm done, right? And he's like, no, your body makes tumors. Like this is a lifetime thing. Like you're
Oh,
Wow.
not
wow.
like my oncologist is saying in scans. But so it's something, but like as a care recipient, right? So the idea is it's like care takes coordination, it's constant, but you guys are going to need care too because it's not going to stop. You're going to be a
Yeah.
caregiver
Great advice.
for the
Yeah.
duration of my life and probably beyond that because people know that you have the tendency to do that. And then with my mom, like caregiving was harder than being the care recipient. Like I think caregiving is probably the hardest thing I'll ever do in my life because you've come like as the care recipient, I have come to peace with the outcome, right? You sign your advanced care directive, like what that is. Like you know what the other side of that looks like. And you control it to some extent, like you're kind of controlling it. Caregiving, you're seeing it and you're a participant in it, but it's not
Oh,
you. So yeah.
I don't know if this is going to get recorded, but I got to throw you hearts. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
that's
We see them.
powerful what you're saying. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that. Thank you.
Yes. So, Randy, I was just wondering when you and your mom were going through your care journeys, were either of you working? And if so, how did your employer play a role or did they play a role in supporting you?
So my mom was not. My mom was retired. So like I think that was great, selfishly for me. And the place I was working at the time was fantastic. I did not realize how much. Like I remember getting a call from the head of the department, like the chief development officer. She was in touch with my sister. My main boss was in touch with my sister. They were
Mm.
calling more because my surgery ran over. I was able to go. Like I think the diagnosis takes a lot. So like you've got scans and blood work, the amount of time to just
Yeah.
get to a diagnosis is a lot. That's a lot of time away. It's money
Yeah.
and it's time away from your job. And then once you figure out what to do, and they knew I had tumors, I didn't know it was cancerous at the time. And then that itself, right? You've got biopsies, you've got a lot to do
Yeah.
before you even get to the solution. And then after the solution, it's a lifetime thing. Um,
Yeah.
I did not take, you always want to go back to work sooner. That's dumb. I should not have done that. Like I tell everybody, like they tell you to take 3 months. It's take like 3.5 months or four, but I did it. But when I got back, I was able to, this is pre-COVID. So I remember worked from home on Wednesdays. There was like a nursing room for mothers, but I could sleep in there during the day. If I was tired, I could take walks. So I was incredibly lucky and accommodating. Um, when I and my mom was retired, so so like she was able, but eventually she wanted to get back because it was around Thanksgiving. She's like, I gotta cook Thanksgiving dinner. I was like, okay, you can go. But but like, but
That's important.
yeah, it's very important. Most like yeah, especially
Yeah.
right, that's a whole other story. Like we aren't taking that on. Secondly, as soon as we're like we're done. That's a lot of work. Okay, but then when I during our my mother's journey, I was working in 2021 and 2022, and my boss was great at the time, right? Like I was working at a tech company, so we were already working from home. I remember taking calls and being like, "Hey, I'm in the car with my sister. Like there she is." And so like JF and like my whole
Yeah.
team, Mary, I still talk to them. I talk to all of them. JF, Mary, Casey, Lori, still talk to all of them still. And very accommodating. And so were the founders. And so I was very lucky. But I do distinctly remember, so something that happens with caregiving is like the VA or whatever hospital is going to call you at all hours, right? The PT is going to come during the day. Work happens between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So you are working. So you could very well be on a call or trying to get something done. And then you're getting a phone call that you actually have to pick up. Like, so I remember
Mhm.
leaving all hands meetings or having to just be like, hey guys, I got to take this call because I couldn't plan it, which I think is huge for caregiving. I was like, it'd be great to actually schedule and time these things if you're trying to work because like having to like mentally brain shift is one thing too, because you have to get out of one mode to another mode,
Yeah.
but then also you're pulling yourself away from something you can't predict. I actually remember yelling very loudly. So I think so. So my dad he's old school, so he likes to call people and talk to people. So he's calling all these people from VA, and then he's telling them to call me. And I was frankly pissed off that we hadn't really heard a lot from the endo team. Whipple, like that help it impacts your pancreas, right? So I was like, diabetes are huge, right? So your insulin and your glucagon management aren't
Yeah.
that great. And I remember like being very upset about this and like, yelling earlier in the day. And then finally we got a call back, but it wasn't somebody who could make a decision. My dad just knew I was flustered. So I think it was somebody who was like high up in the endocrinology department, but he couldn't make a decision. I remember pulling myself away from like an all hands meeting and like slowly going on mute, talking to this person on the phone and just sheer frustration because it was like a 40-minute conversation. So I'm grateful that he took the time to call me, but I was also like, just remembering this, there's no solution here. Like this is like, I don't have 40 minutes. Like it's in the middle of the work day. Like, and I
Yeah.
remember putting on my calendar, like I put in like the injection schedule of my mother and the feeding schedule because like, so it would be blocked off so people wouldn't schedule over it. So my coworkers were amazing, right? They allowed this to happen. But like, just so I like, and, I'm Virgo. I was pretty regimented. So it was like outside of the feeding and the like the shot schedule and just being like, and it was also like you pick the right one. He was there. I'm not mature. I could yell at him, right? It was just like that because it was so
Poor
like the
guy.
whole
Yeah.
process was so frustrating that I was like,
Yes.
"Okay." And then, but then when my mom passed away, I was not working. I had been laid off, and nor was my sister at the time either. And I think, honestly, like it's probably good. I think my mom planned it that way because the emotional stress and like just like the logistics management of like funerals and cremations and repasses and just having that like the time to reflect and to like just see my mom's lifespan and like go down rabbit holes about like her high school. JT Barber, all of that is online that we didn't know because she doesn't talk about her high school, but being able to go down those
Mm,
rabbit holes and like
yeah.
eventually we found a book of poetry that she had, like just being able to have the mental capacity and not have to find somebody to yell at because you're frustrated like break down or
Yeah.
cry. No, that's really terrible.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
like yeah, and so
Yeah. Wow.
I'm
Wow.
grateful for
Thank
So
that.
you.
I wanted to just do a quick follow-up question. for anybody in our audience that may be HR or, employers, if you had to pick one thing that your employer did during that really difficult, awful time that, you were working, you were sick yourself, your mom was sick, you were trying to do you had on all these hats. And you talked a lot about everyone was very supportive. You had the emotional support. It sounds like you had flexibility in your schedule. You knew that your job was secure because that's one of the things that people don't like to reveal that they're caregivers because they're afraid that they're going to lose their job. But it doesn't sound like you had that problem. So what do you think, for our HR people, what do you want to just make loud and clear to them that was one or two things that really was the most beneficial to someone going through a care journey like you went through?
Yeah. So, at first I was like, I'm just call out seniors. They walked me through my rights. Like I went down to HR, they scheduled, I had 2 hour long meetings where I got to understand what disability looked like, what medical leave looked like, and they were frank and honest about the law, which I don't think is something a lot of people can handle. And I live in California, which I'm gonna like that becomes very important, right? We've got pretty good employer rights here. So that might not be the case. So knowing your rights, so it's or offering like EAP or some third party assistance so that people can understand what they have rights to. And I completely understand why people don't say why they're caregiving. A lot of times, a lot of those rights, you have to show that you're the primary caregiver. So
Mhm.
in my case, that would have been my dad, right? So that would have been a situation where they could have pushed back on. And I've seen that happen, right? I don't know all of the rules, but like, so as an HR person, let people know what they have rights to and what might be a little bit more gray. And then, and also for HR, and this is also for people's direct bosses, and then they in the chain of supervision,
Hmm.
there's the acute moment of care, right? When like, there's the discharge or when they're like out of the hospital, but then there's all the steps leading up to it, and then there's the continuous maintenance and surveillance that I think
Hmm.
we forget about in the healthcare system, right? They think it's like there's like just 2 months of like intensity, and then it just like we just forget. And so I think there's a point in which you have to see the full journey. And yeah, I mean it's caregiving takes a village. It's also constant, right? So like you have to go to appointments, you have to go to follow-up appointments, you have to get scans, you have to get blood work, you should be going to grief counseling. Like you should be going, like you should be doing all the mental health stuff too, right? Like you should have therapy appointments. So it's something where it's like understand the full journey and understand that like it's not clustered, it's not acute, right? And for 2 years, you probably are going to need 2 hours a week just to like mentally do, and that's not even enough time. I mean, like at the conference we were at, that Selma and I were at, they were like a claim, I guess apparently it's like the equivalent of what like 2 weeks of 8 hour days or something. So even that's not that generous, but just know that there's mental time and everybody's going to go through it. So it's not like you're giving people a pass or giving people a break. We work from what, like 22 to 65. Like you were hitting everything in your life at that
Yeah,
point. And doesn't mean you're a bad employee or you're a good employee, you're getting special treatment. We are all going to get it. It actually makes you better. I will say both journeys have made me a acutely better employee just because I have way better understanding of what's in the room. I understand how context works. I understand better how things are interconnected. I understand that there are many components and not just an outcome. So you got to work with us. Full stop.
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. What are you currently doing now?
So I work in marketing, actually in growth marketing, and right now I actually speak of like I work in tech, right, but I was just laid off again. So let me be very honest. So I am looking to continue, but this I liked where I worked before because of the patient advocacy piece. I was able to work very closely with patient advocacy groups. So speaking of impacting my journey, and so I
Yeah.
went from fundraising, so like direct response
Yeah.
fundraising in the nonprofit space. Later on, I moved into just like growth marketing. So like all those ads and the emails and the campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it, and then my last role was definitely working with patient advocacy groups to create actually ready-made toolkits so they could encourage their very specific people in the rare disease community to join the platform.
So
Um,
I probably already, I mean, I could almost list what you're about to say, but for our viewers, it'd be good for them to hear this. So what skill sets would you say that you pulled from your caregiving experience to do things like marketing, creating patient advocacy materials? What, go ahead, list them. List the ones that you, and as well as a care recipient, I imagine you've got some great skill sets, experiences. What would you say they are? And the reason why this is also important, Randy, and why we appreciate this is because we try to encourage caregivers when they have a gap in their resume to list their caregiving experience and to list these caregiver skills. What would you say are some that have really helped you do what you're doing now or what you were doing?
Oh yeah, that's actually a great, I've never said, but it's actually a great question because when I was diagnosed in 2016, I was technically, yeah, I was the person who like those end of year campaigns, the Giving Tuesday, like that's what I did, right, on a digital side, right? And I think after I became a caregiver,
Mm,
um, the planning, or sorry, but actually became a care recipient, the planning so much better, like so much more acute because you actually have to like list and plan out a little bit more, right? You're not like in the hyper moment. So that's something as a caregiver, you are a project manager, like at a good one, because okay, I'm not gonna scare. Like it's life or death, right? So you learn how to project manage. You learn how
yeah,
to like
big
create
time.
systems. Like you learn how to do things. So like, the marketing were creative, but you actually know how to tactfully do it. And
Yeah.
another thing is you resource allocation because to get the information to be a really good caregiver, right? So we're going to go back to like, like when I was working at the fintech company I was working at, like you actively rely on other people to help guide and to understand. So like, so it's beyond project management, right? It's like stakeholder management. It is like resource allocation. It's also
Mhm.
using networks and partner organizations. You probably reached out to nonprofits. You probably worked with a patient advocacy group yourself to gather information that actually led to change in action or led to outcomes and
Wow.
impact and better impact.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
thing that I think a lot that I heard about, just, like in my last few roles that I've had, is yeah, like it's something that I didn't appreciate at the time, but like, no, I actually understand all that medical jargon. Like I actually understand insurance stuff. Like this
Yeah.
is actually not like you always we get really humble about it and you're like, well, I don't even know. It's because it's really complicated. But as a caregiver, your knowledge of just medical stuff is significantly more advanced out of just
I could
necessity than
imagine.
caregivers.
I
Yeah,
can
and
imagine.
that's the ability to learn a new industry, like learn a new
Yeah.
understanding. Right? So I'm thinking of I went from nonprofit to fintech to health tech, and I was like, well, obviously I can learn about different industries and different regulations and different
Yeah.
standards because I had to, and
Yeah.
like it's just like a sheer thing you have to do, right?
One last question. You've been so generous with your time. Are you good on time? A few more minutes?
I'm
You
good on.
good?
Okay.
Okay. You're such an amazing woman. We really are just honored to have you on this call. And I am so glad that Selma met you at the
Yeah.
Caregiver Nation Summit. Shout out to Jason Resendez and the National Alliance for Caregiving and the great work they do. I got to ask you, why did you decide to go there? And what would you say changed you coming back after that experience? Because you already have such great experiences already, but I'd be curious to know, did you pick up another great experience that kind of impacted you? So why did you go? And is there something that changed you a little bit after you came back?
Okay, yeah. So two questions.
Besides meeting me,
Of
besides
Yeah, I
meeting
was gonna
course.
me.
say,
Of
obviously, me and
course.
Selma actually navigated Hill Day way better. I had a moment that Selma walked me through during Hill Day where I was very hyped up about one thing, and I was just kind of like, "Oh my gosh, like why?" Like I got flustered, and like both Nicole and Selma kind of walked me off that, like because I couldn't articulate the way I wanted to. So thank you,
She's
and just
done
like
that for me
the
quite a few times. She's done that.
yeah, and just like the attorney, kind of like the attorney background, so the being able to like kind of just like get to the point, the fine tuning of the point, and like seeing kind of what's happening, but like let that land, like that was fantastic. And so I'm definitely taking that home, and just in terms of like when I talk, and the reason why I actually went to that conference was I was speaking on a panel, and they reached out to me about speaking on a panel about
Mhm.
just like essential partnerships, and it was around caregiving and how to like really integrate and change like the systematic approach. That's had a great panel of people from like Northwell. It was a very good panel. And that's why I attended it. But the connections I also made in just terms of before I really spoke from a patient perspective, and I hadn't spoken a lot from the caregiver perspective. And that caregiver's perspective, kind of what I learned from Selma at Hill Day, was just that grounding. Like people need the nuggets of like this is the action and especially in terms of like policy and just systems management and infrastructure. So not like I think on Hill Day I learned like people humans are good, right? We understand that we need each other. We understand emotion, we understand support, and we want to help, but people also need direction on how to help, right? Because you can be compassionate, you can do the sad face, you can show that you love something, but like if you don't change the system or the infrastructure, like nothing's going to move forward. And so
Yeah.
being able to like pinpoint that and be like, no, this is actually the solution is huge. So I learned that from Selma Hill Day and the conference itself, because that conference was all just about like tactical change, right? Not like
Yeah. Yeah.
not emotion, but change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say I was so pleasantly inspired and encouraged by seeing so many of the skills that you mentioned in your care journey come out during that advocacy period that we had on Capitol Hill. I saw so much of that, and I'm hoping that you have that information in your LinkedIn profile. As Zach and I are always encouraging people to do that on their resume and their profile, because you have so much to offer
Yeah.
to the next
Yeah.
employer, and you don't want to be overlooked. So that's a really powerful experience that you can share and take forward in your career. Um, One last question, and that is, how can your future employer get in touch with you? And how can the audience learn more about your story and the work that you're interested in doing?
Yeah. So LinkedIn. So Randi Ervin, I am on LinkedIn. And I am more than happy to say like my email, like I'm probably better with email. It's randy@randiervin.com. So I think it's in there. So you guys are more than welcome to email me. I like to stay in touch with people. I'm taking notes of like I'm trying to a thing that I learned with my LinkedIn. I actually am trying to add more voice to just to like the experience and the journey. And I will say I do volunteer for Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. I've been on the Survival Council for several years, and I like help out the local affiliates. So like there's a lot in this space that there's a lot of support in the space, and now I'm looking to just bridge it more so that we can actually have tangible change. So
Well, Zach
Thank
and I are so happy that you made the time to be here today and share this valuable, just so much valuable information. And as I said before, when we started out, you're the first guest that has walked both sides of the journey. So thank you for coming and sharing that experience with us, for
well,
sure.
thanks for having me and inviting me.
thank you, Randy. Awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.